Not a week goes by at the moment without some fresh beef between Formula 1 and the FIA, and in the run-up to the Las Vegas Grand Prix, it's happening all over again. 2 weeks after the F1 grid joined together to write a scathing public letter calling out the FIA's management of the sport, they're once again angry at the FIA, as F1's governing body has failed to offer any kind of response. What they've managed to do in that time, though, is fire the race director in suspect circumstances, fire the man who's meant to keep the FIA president in check, and infuriate the teams with an unannounced rule change which could ruin half the grid's Las Vegas Grand Prix. Today, I'll check out the growing fury against the FIA and its president Mohammed Ben Sulayem, so don't go anywhere. I feel like I've written this intro 100 times already this season. Following a year full of issues between the FIA and the teams and drivers of Formula 1, yet more problems have surfaced. 2 weeks ago, the Grand Prix Drivers Association penned an open letter to the FIA in response to its president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, or MBS. MBS had introduced a ban on swearing, which saw Max Verstappen receive community service and Charles Leclerc receive a fine. It was a ban which he introduced during an interview with the press rather than through any official portal or after discussions with the teams and drivers. Lewis Hamilton also accused the FIA president of using stereotypical language with a racial element in the interview. After issues with jewelry and underwear in recent seasons as well, the drivers said that they were fed up with being treated like children and were resorting to an open letter as the FIA had failed to get involved in a dialogue to address the drivers' problems. While MBS wasn't specifically called out in the letter, it was very obvious that it was directed towards him. That letter was published 2 weeks ago, and considering how drastic the action of the GPDA was, an organization which prefers to do its work quietly, the drivers should have expected a response, yet none has been forthcoming. Speaking in the FIA press conference in Las Vegas ahead of this weekend's race, George Russell, who is the head of the GPDA, was asked if the FIA had been in touch following the aforementioned statement. "No," Russell said. "Not at the moment, which I'm a little bit surprised about, but maybe there'll be something to come, who knows." While MBS hasn't responded to the driver's letter, you can guarantee he'll be on the grid, in the pit lane and involved in everything he can be where there is a TV camera this weekend. Russell used the FIA press conference to convey just how done the drivers were with the current FIA president and his handling of Formula 1. The Briton said, "There are a number of drivers who feel a bit fed up with the whole situation, and it only seems to be going to a degree in the wrong direction." Russell made it clear he was referring specifically to the leadership of the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem. He said it was not difficult to have a meeting with Ben Sulayem, but having promises fulfilled is another matter. He made it very clear that the drivers had no animosity toward the FIA as a whole and that they understood that working underneath MBS cannot be an easy job. "We recognize everyone is working as hard as they can to do the best job possible," he added. There is obviously a huge amount of change within the FIA quite regularly, so it's clearly not the most stable of places. Maybe that's why it's been a bit challenging to get some of the changes that we've wanted implemented. Of course, everyone has their own side to their own story. As I said, I think if we feel that we're being listened to and some of the changes that we're requesting are implemented, because ultimately we're only doing it for the benefit of the sport, then maybe our confidence will increase. The huge amount of change that George is referring to is the incredibly high turnover of senior management within the FIA. The FIA compliance officer, Paolo Bazzari, who answers only to the FIA Senate, was sacked last week despite his position within the organization not being discussed by the Senate, raising concerns that MBS was circumventing the FIA's own rules to maintain control over the organization. Formula 1's race director Niels Wittich was also sacked last week. The FIA attempted to spin it as Niels' decision, but he quickly refuted that through the media, stating very clearly that he had been sacked. That decision was seen as a retaliatory move by MBS against Wittich, whom MBS may have felt should have contained the drivers better to avoid the releasing of the GPDA's embarrassing letter. Speaking of the sacking of the race director, Russell said, "Talking as a fellow driver, as opposed to my role with the GPDA, everybody felt with certain things that have happened that we wanted to stand united. At the end of the day, we just wanted to be transparent with the FIA and have this dialogue. And the departure of Niels is a prime example of not being part of these conversations. The letter is kind of putting the pressure back on them." Before I cover the rest of the drivers' concerns and the surprising technical directive which could cause big problems this weekend, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch more daily F1 news, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. Russell went on to admit that the drivers were not fully content with some aspects of Whittaker's work since he became race director at the start of the 2022 season, but were nonetheless shocked at the decision and the timing just 3 races before the end of the season. There is no secret that some were not happy with what was going on in terms of the decisions that were being made, but he worked together with us and we could have helped improve the matter. Sometimes just hiring and firing is not the solution. What particularly annoyed many of the drivers was the way in which they found out about the sacking. Charles Leclerc told the media that he, and many other drivers, found out by seeing social media posts about it. McLaren driver Lando Norris said, "I don't know what's going on there. Obviously things are not running as smoothly as we would want." The drivers are the most public-facing body in the Formula One world. They have tens of millions of followers on social media, their quotes are repeated everywhere by the media, and their faces fill the live broadcasts. If Mohammed Ben Sulayem wants to wage a war against them through the FIA, it won't end well. The drivers will always have the public's favour. He's fighting a battle he cannot win, and no one really knows his reasons for doing so. What do you think he's trying to achieve out of this? While you let me know in the comments down below, allow me to tell you about the technical directive that blindsided the teams this week and will have a massive impact on the Las Vegas Grand Prix. So, with immediate effect, the FIA have banned the use of protective plates that 50% of the grid were using to protect their skid blocks from excessive wear. If you remember all the way back to 2022, when the ground effect era started, there were serious concerns over driver safety due to the cars bottoming out due to porpoising, leading to the now infamous "fix your effing car" quote from Christian Horner. Well, because Toto and the rest of the grid wouldn't fix their effing cars, the FIA stepped in and introduced a new test, which measured the wear of the plank after the race to make sure the cars weren't just dragging along the ground and hurting the drivers. It worked, the teams fixed their effing cars, and that was the end of it. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc got disqualified from the 2023 US GP for having too much plank wear. But of course, this is Formula One, and if there's an advantage to be gained, the teams will go after it. Running your car closer to the ground means better performance, so the teams invented a retracting plank, which was then banned, and now they've invented an armored plank. What they were doing was adding material around where the FIA conduct their wear tests to protect the tested area and allow more wear during the race, meaning they could run their car lower without getting disqualified post-race. Auto, Motor and Sport are reporting that half the teams on the grid are using the trick, including Ferrari, Mercedes and Haas. McLaren and Red Bull are not believed to be using the trick. It was Red Bull who pointed out to the FIA that the trick was illegal if the rules were applied properly, and that a protest would have to be expected if there was no clarification on this issue. That clarification came quickly and clearly. In a technical directive, the FIA announced that the protective skids in question were not permitted. This assessment applies with immediate effect, meaning that the half of the grid that was using the trick will have to fix it before the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Ferrari would have liked to move the date to the Qatar Grand Prix, but were unable to get their way. The trick will undoubtedly be adding performance to the Ferrari car and that of the others, and considering Ferrari's fight for the Constructors' Championship, an extra race with it installed could have been vital. The short notice of the technical directive has caught the teams out, and they're unhappy about having to make changes at such short notice. They now have a problem that is all the greater when the aerodynamics are specifically designed for extremely low ground clearance. Because no one can risk the skid blocks rubbing off too much, the relevant teams have to raise their vehicle height to a safe level. That will cost them lap time, and in Las Vegas it'll be all the more painful. Street circuits are always bumpy due to the heavy use they receive all year round, and the teams will have to add on plenty of ground clearance to avoid a post-race disqualification. What are your thoughts on the FIA at the moment? Let me know below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.